Bring it back. Otherwise you gotta.
Coming back. It's not okay. You're gonna put your.
You guys ready down there?
Come on, Rosemary.
Yes, sir. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Before we get started, I just want to let everybody know, you'll see Dr. Hayworth is not with us tonight. He just asked that I let you know that he had a minor accidental injury, so his absence is not COVID related. He just is a little under the weather from an injury, so Dr. Goller can help us out tonight. Again, thank you for joining us. We're going to start with our Pledge of Allegiance, and that's going to be led by Mrs. Lauer.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join me for a moment of silence. Thank you. Now that we're all seated and socially distant, if you feel comfortable, you may take your mask off. We just ask that if you come up to the microphone, you put your mask back on to and from the microphone. Dr. Goller, can we get a roll call, please?
Yes, Ms. Scott. Here. Mrs. Wise. Here. Mr. Burks.
Present.
Mr. Irwin.
Present.
Mr. Lockhart.
Here.
Ms. Lauer.
Present.
Dr. Powers. Here.
Thank you, Dr. Goller. Our vision is working together with our community. We inspire our students to discover their talents and rise to their greatest potential. Our mission is building on the strengths of our diverse community. We create an engaging, comprehensive educational environment that supports the growth of lifelong learners. Our values are: we are committed to always asking and answering what is in the best interest of each student. Leading by example, we are committed to personal accountability and work habits, honesty and respect. We are committed to a safe, secure, and welcoming environment. We are committed to practices of inclusive excellence that value differences. We are committed to respecting the voice of all district stakeholders through collaborative engagement, and we are committed to developing students who improve the quality of life for the Wabash Valley. Now is the time for our first call for citizen comments. This is the time to comment on agenda items, and please state your name, which agenda item you will be speaking on, and please limit your time to 5 minutes.
Hi, I'm Tim Murphy, Band Director at Terre Haute South Eagle High School.
I'm Chris Gelb, the Band Director and Orchestra Director at West Vigo High School. We're here to discuss briefly the bid for instrument purchases for Vigo County Schools. We just want to say that we really strongly appreciate all the efforts and support that we get from the Vigo County School Corporation for extracurricular and co-curricular activities such as music. And we're very excited at the possibility of such a large purchase and needed purchase for instruments for Vigo County Schools, and can't wait to get them in the proper hands.
Thank you. Any others this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Burks made the motion to approve the consent agenda. Mrs. Wise seconded that. Dr. Goller, can I get a roll call, please?
Ms. Scott.
Aye.
Mrs. Wise.
Aye.
Mr. Burks.
Aye.
Mr. Irwin.
Aye.
Mr. Lockhart.
Aye.
Ms. Lauer.
Aye.
Dr. Powers.
Aye.
Thank you. And again, anywhere we see Dr. Hayworth tonight, we're going to defer to Dr. Goller, and she may defer to somebody else, but we're ready for donations.
We would like to bring forth several donations this evening. One is the acknowledgement of a donation for the backpack program of $2,703.70. Mr. and Mrs. Rodney Hill, Mr. Floyd Johnson, and the Vigo County Education Foundation. Very much appreciative of those donations to the backpack program. Also for Rio Grande Elementary, we have a patron who has donated a Texas gas transmission, $1,000 to Rio Grande for the use as they deem appropriate. Very much appreciate that. And also from Sarah Scott Middle School, we had several individuals who have donated to the school. That would be Mrs. Namburi, Mr. Martland, Pimento Church, State Farm Insurance, Todd Brenza, United Methodist Temple, and Sycamore Engineering. So very much appreciate those donations and would seek approval this evening.
So moved.
I'll second.
Mr. Burks made the motion to approve the donations. Mrs. Lauer seconded that. Dr. Goller, can I get a roll call, please?
Mrs. Scott,
Aye.
Mrs. Wise,
Aye.
Mr. Burks,
Aye.
Mr. Irwin,
Aye.
Mr. Lockhart,
Aye.
Ms. Lauer,
Aye.
Dr. Powers.
Aye.
Thank you, Dr. Goller. Mr. Cox with the personnel report and professional leave requests.
President Irwin, Deputy Superintendent Dr. Goller, members of the board, administration seeks approval of the personnel report and leave as presented.
I so moved.
Second.
Mr. Lockhart made the motion to approve. Mrs. Lauer seconded that. Can I get a roll call, please, Dr. Goller?
Ms. Scott,
Aye.
Mrs. Wise,
Aye.
Mr. Burks,
Aye.
Mr. Irwin,
Aye.
Mr. Lockhart,
Aye.
Ms. Lauer,
Aye.
Dr. Powers.
Aye.
Thank you, Dr. Goller. We'll now move on to the permission to advertise our 2021 budget with Mrs. Wilson.
President Irwin, Dr. Goller, and members of the Board of School Trustees. Tonight's meeting is the first in a series of 3 where we will discuss the 2021 calendar year budget of the school corporation. After this evening's presentation, we will request permission to advertise Budget Form 3 on Gateway. As you know, Gateway is the public internet access portal that warehouses all information about taxing unit data. Advertisement of Form 3, as in tonight's board packet, provides the public with notice of the budget process, including dates of the public hearing, budget adoption meeting, proposed 2021 budgets and levies, and comparative 2020 tax data. As a board, you will be asked to approve budgets only for the education and rainy day funds, as these funds are not supported by local tax levies. For the operations, debt service, and referendum funds, you will be asked to approve both a budget and a tax levy. The budget and levy that you ultimately approve in October is only preliminary, as all budget forms will go to the Department of Local Government Finance for review with final approval late this year. As our budget proposal is built on estimates of enrollment, county assessed value, revenues, and expenditures, the DLGF will revise these estimates using updated data, apply levy or tax rate limits as required by law, and subsequently arrive at final budgets and levies for the school corporation. The 2021 budget cycle began with the actual June 30th, 2020 cash balances and revenue and expenditure projections through December 31st, 2021. Historic and anticipated financial information was used to compile budget needs for the 21 calendar year. Miscellaneous revenue estimates for 2021 were then compared to budgetary needs with levies then computed. Keep in mind that for budgeting purposes, we anticipate revenue low and expenditures high to be conservative. These assumptions generate inflated levies that we look at on a later slide. Let's first look at the proposed fund budgets. This slide shows the proposed and final budgets for 2020 and the 2021 proposed budgets. The Education Fund supports all educational programming of the school district. This fund is supported primarily through state tuition support that is calculated using pupil count data gathered by the Department of Education in September, and then later in the fall and winter as we count special education and CTE students for additional funding. There is no local tax levy for this fund. We request permission this evening to advertise a budget of $101.8 million for the Education Fund. The Operations Fund supports all operational aspects of the school corporation and came into existence in 2019 as the capital projects, transportation, and bus replacement funds were combined with the operational departments that were formerly part of the general fund. The Operations Fund will require budget and tax levy approval, as it is reliant on local property tax as well as a subsidy from the Education Fund. The Operations Fund absorbs the majority of the circuit breaker loss, which for 2021 is estimated to be approximately $6.9 million. And it also benefits greatly from the rolling general obligation bond program that the board has supported in recent years, as well as just lately in 2020. Operations would normally be used to fund corporation-wide roofing, mechanical, and paving projects, but those major items have been moved to the GO Bond Fund, providing financial relief to the Operations Fund by mitigating the effect of the circuit breaker loss. We request permission this evening to advertise an operations budget of $42.9 million for 2021. The Debt Service Fund budget provides for the repayment of approved debt, a subsidy for free textbooks not reimbursed by the state, and temporary loan interest of $500,000. The 2021 budget reflects the last payments on the 2018 and 2019 GO bonds and the first payment on the recently approved $5.35 million GO bond. We request permission to advertise a budget of just under $9 million in the Debt Service Fund. The Rainy Day Fund proposed budget includes the current unexpended cash balance plus an additional $3 million from the sale of the administration building that is currently in the Operations Fund. Later this year, we will come before the board requesting permission to transfer the building sale proceeds from operations to Rainy Day. The $3.5 million budget shown on this slide represents our request to approve advertisement of the resulting cash balance in Rainy Day to be appropriated for use, if and when needed, for central office relocation expenses or any other expense the board deems necessary. The last fund to discuss is the Referendum Fund. New this year, the Referendum Fund came about after Vigo County voters passed an operating referendum last November. The operating referendum fund, as promised, is used to provide assistance to the Education and Operations funds by assisting with teachers' salaries, supporting our counseling, behavior intervention, and school protection officer programs, providing additional nursing services, and subsidizing our transportation costs. The fund was approved with a rate cap of 16.22 cents per $100 of countywide assessed value. As the corporation is able to capture revenue generated by growth in the countywide AV, which includes possible growth in the assessed value of the county's TIF districts, we based our levy calculation on a 15% increase in assessed value. A 15% increase in the assessed value with a rate cap of 16.22 cents would fund the budget presented of $8.5 million as shown. When the final assessed value is known, this budget will be reduced as the rate cap is applied to the actual assessed value. The next slide shows our 2021 proposed tax levies. As you can see, these levies are similar to the 2020 proposal. Levies shown here are overstated and will be reduced by the DLGF when the final budget review is complete. We used low revenue projections in the calculation of the budgets, producing higher than expected levies for 2021. To Tonight's proposal includes an operating fund levy of $29.7 million. However, the operation fund is a levy-limited fund with a maximum levy limit imposed when the budget is finalized by the DLGF. The levy is limited to a growth quotient established annually, with this year's growth quotient set at 4.2%. The proposed levy will be reflective of the application of the levy limit by the DLGF with a significant reduction in the advertised levy of $29.7 million. Operations will also absorb the majority of the circuit breaker tax credit lost this year, estimated to be as high as $6.9 million. This slide also shows the proposed $10.8 million levy in debt service and an $8.1 million levy in the referendum fund. As I stated earlier, the levy for the referendum fund will be established at no more than 16.22 cents applied to the actual county assessed value. When all is said and done, we expect 2021 final numbers to be similar to those shown in 2020. This slide shows the historical percentage of levy realized over the last several years. As you can see, we traditionally advertise high levies to be subsequently reduced by the DLGF. Past history indicates we realize about 80% of the advertised levy. We often use urban school peer group data when showing enrollment and test scores, and here's a chart showing that same peer group and how we compare to them with total tax levy information. You can see that when compared to our peers, our levy is the lowest in the group. Vigo County is the far right column. You will also note that all members of the group have an operating or capital referendum, and some have both. The blue bar represents the operations fund levy, and the orange is debt. The other colors primarily represent referendum levies. Absent from the Form 3 is tax rate data, and probably for good reason. To be totally transparent with this process, we've included a slide on tax rates. However, this slide is quite misleading as the data it is supported by is still in question. At the September 28th meeting, we will pass out budget books with all required budget forms. One of those forms, the 4B, includes the calculation of tax rates, so these numbers will be shown. It's important to realize that the tax rates are calculated using a county assessed value, which as of today is not known, and a levy that has yet to be approved. For purposes of the Form 4B, we projected a lower than expected assessed value, 85% of current, except in the case of the referendum fund, and a higher than expected levy, which inflates the tax rate shown on this slide. This slide shows the evolution of the tax rate since 2017 and clearly demonstrates that the rate as advertised is always higher than that rate ultimately approved by the DLGF. We anticipate the same situation in 2021. The next slide shows the assessed value of the county since 2012, and you can see that the increasing assessed value has kept our tax rate steady over the years. The 2020 assessed value was over $4 billion. This next slide shows the approved rates since 2016, and as you can see, they have been consistent and only increased in 2020 after the operating referendum was approved. Without the referendum, the combined rate in 2020 would have been 77.84 cents. Finally, let's look at the regional school districts and the tax rates from 2020. You can see that we have the third lowest combined tax rate in the region with the referendum fund, which is shaded in light blue. Without the operating referendum, we would have had the lowest tax rate in the region. Among urban schools, our combined tax rate without the referendum is the lowest, as you can see. We are again in the far right column at just under 78 cents. And MSD Wayne is at the far left with $1.60. And finally, with the referendum, we still have the lowest combined rate with just under 94 cents. Evansville-Vanderburgh is immediately to our left at just slightly over 94 cents. And MSU Lane is again high with $2.30, including the referendum. The last slide shows the key dates in the budget process. If granted permission to advertise this evening, we will advertise the Form 3 on Gateway tomorrow. The public hearing on the budget would be held at the meeting on September 28th, and the public will be granted an opportunity to speak on the budget at that time. Additionally, you will receive complete budget books containing all the required budget forms and the capital projects and bus replacement plans. We will go over these documents prior to the public comment portion of the agenda. On October 19th, you will be asked to approve the budget and finalize your portion of the budget process. With that said, I'd entertain any questions you may have at this time.
This isn't a question, but thank you for that very thorough presentation.
Thank you.
I diddle that.
Thank you.
I now entertain a motion.
I so move. Second.
Mr. Burks made the motion to approve. Mr. Lockhart seconded that on the permission to advertise the 2021 budget.
Just want to make a comment if I could.
Absolutely.
We had a finance meeting on Friday in which Mrs. Wilson explained even in more detail, I believe, or certainly as much, and it was a very productive meeting, I believe, and we went over a number of things, but it's very important for us to advertise rates such that we would maximize the amount of taxes that we can bring in. Thank you very much for that.
Dr. Goller, can we get a roll call, please?
It's Ms. Scott,
Aye.
Mrs. Wise,
Aye.
Mr. Burks,
Aye.
Mr. Irwin,
Aye.
Mr. Lockhart,
Aye.
Ms. Lauer,
Aye.
Dr. Powers.
Aye.
Now we have the fee approval for the functional class. Mrs. Wilson, is that you as well?
Oh, that's okay. In the board packet this evening is a recommendation to set the elementary consumable fee for the functional classrooms at $75 and the secondary fee at $100. This fee is in lieu of a regular textbook rental fee, as those classes traditionally don't rely strictly on a textbook. And it would be a consumable fee. And this has increased a little over past years, but we felt it was time to update that fee.
What's the effective date of that fee that will be assessed this year?
Pardon me?
That will be assessed yet this year?
Yes. Yes, that would be assessed this year, and it would be used to purchase manipulatives and different types of consumables to be used by those students in those classrooms, since they don't use the traditional book.
Thank you. I would entertain a motion for the fee approval.
So moved. Second.
Mrs. Wise made the motion to approve. Dr. Powers seconded that. Dr. Goller, can we get a roll call, please?
Ms. Scott,
Aye.
Mrs. Wise,
Aye.
Mr. Burks,
Aye.
Mr. Irwin,
Aye.
Mr. Lockhart,
Aye.
Mrs. Lauer,
Aye.
Dr. Powers.
Aye.
Moving on to the permission to advertise the music bid. This was going to be Dr. Hayworth. Dr. Goller, are you going to handle that?
Certainly. Tonight, we bring forth the permission to solicit bids for musical instruments and equipment. We heard two of our music colleagues endorse this earlier tonight. Basically, schools have submitted lists of instruments and equipment needed for the music programs. These lists have been summarized and reviewed by the administration. In order to get the best pricing available, the administration now seeks approval to solicit bids for the requested items. The bids would be evaluated with the ultimate bid award being brought forward for board approval at a future board meeting. The purchase of this equipment would be made through general obligation bond funds and education funds appropriations. So we would like to thank our music department chairs, Dr. Hayworth, those who put forth this information and took the time to inventory the equipment that has been very outdated, and we're very much in favor of this proposal. So we would ask for a approval tonight to advertise the music bid.
I'll second.
Mr. Burks made the motion to approve, Mrs. Lauer seconded that. I think I'd just like to say, I saw something, I think it was in the board packet or an email from Dr. Hayworth, where the average age of the instruments was 1990. So this is well overdue. So maybe in the future, we can look at, maybe a small investment every year, so that we don't have 30 years down the road making a large investment. But definitely something that's needed and is going to benefit our students. We get a roll call, please, Dr. Goldman.
Ms. Scott?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Burks?
Aye.
Mr. Irwin?
Aye.
Mr. Lockhart?
Aye.
Ms. Lauer?
Aye.
Dr. Powers?
Aye.
Moving on to the memorandum of understanding between our corporation and the Boys and Girls Club.
This evening, we bring you a memorandum of understanding between the school corporation and the Boys and Girls Club. As you see in your board packet, this is an opportunity for us to recognize the partnership that we have with the Boys and Girls Clubs of Indiana. They are submitting a grant application to the 21st Century Community Learning Centers program. This has been a very successful endeavor so far with the school corporation. We have Mrs. Kathy Deal in the very back, who helps us with our school corporation partnership with 21st Century. We have Mr. Miles, who's here with us this evening, that has worked on this particular proposal, which would be another 21st Century grant sponsored by the Indiana Department of Ed that would come from the community aspect of the 21st Century and strengthen the after-school partnerships for families within our community. So at this time, they are asking for us to recognize this partnership within their grant application. And we would ask for your approval this evening.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Burks made the motion to approve, Mrs. Wise seconded that. Dr. Hayworth, for discussion, had asked that I make sure it's clarified that, this will happen once COVID, once it's deemed safe. And, this isn't gonna happen tomorrow, it's once it's safe. Can we get a roll call, please?
Ms. Scott?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Burks?
Aye.
Mr. Irwin?
Aye.
Mr. Lockhart?
Aye.
Ms. Lauer?
Aye.
Dr. Powers?
Aye.
Moving on to our resolution for Red for Ed. This is something that we've been talking about for a little bit. We did last year, we're gonna do it again this year. And Dr. B, are you gonna read it for us?
Certainly. Whereas teachers are the profession that trains all others, and whereas the future leaders of our nation and our community are inspired by educators, and whereas educators work tirelessly to make a difference in the lives of their students, and whereas students and educators deserve to receive the support they need to thrive. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the members of the Vigo County School Corporation, Board of School Trustees, Vigo County, Indiana, and the school administration supports our teachers as they call for statewide action to improve public education resources and teacher compensation through the Red for Ed movement. Be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be placed in the minutes of the Vigo County School Corporation September 14, 2020 board meeting, and a copy be tendered to the president of the Vigo County School Teachers Association.
Thank you, Dr. B.
I so move approval.
I second.
Mr. Lockhart made the motion to approve, Mrs. Lauer seconded that. We just thank everybody for their support for our teachers, and this is a worthy cause.
Ms. Scott?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Burks?
Aye.
Mr. Irwin?
Aye.
Mr. Lockhart?
Aye.
Ms. Lauer?
Aye.
Dr. Powers?
Aye.
Thank you. We now move on to our second call for citizen comments. This can be on anything except personnel. We just ask that you would state your name and keep your comments to 5 minutes, please. Seeing none, we move on to committee reports from board members. Things have been kind of quiet. Mr. Lockhart talked about the finance committee earlier, so thank you for that. Dr. Goller, did Dr. Dr. Hayward have anything for us?
Certainly. We'd like to share an update on the professional development that's been taking place to prepare our students and our teachers for digital learning. And I'd like to say that if you remember when we had all of our community meetings and parents and other community members looked at strengths within our educational system, they mentioned that teacher quality was the very top strength in the school corporation. And I appreciate being able to make this comment tonight with Mrs. Buckaloo here and Red for Ed, and really praising our teachers and everything that they're doing to try to help our boys and girls make the very, very best of this COVID situation. And so they have worked very, very hard to learn digital learning and ways to best use the new Chromebook to help our students as they navigate the waters of digital learning. We had a first professional development session in May. We had teachers that worked during the last 2 weeks of May for 6 hours each. They learned the different components of the Chromebook, Canvas, and Google Suite. And then this summer, we had 2 week-long workshops for teachers in grades 3 to 12 in how to use Canvas, which is the district's new learning management system. Those workshops were very, very well attended. And then we also had other workshops for Google Meet, Google Mail, ConnectEd, Canvas, and Skyward. And we had a total of 4,100 teachers, so some attended more than one workshop this summer. But when you think of the number of teachers that participated in those workshops over the summer during their own time, it was really a remarkable occurrence, and really appreciate what teachers are doing to help our students be ready to, again, navigate this situation. Also, the district, we have had committees that have worked together to pursue 2 grants to help us with technology integration. The first one is a Career Ladders grant, and we have a teacher in each building who has accepted the responsibility of leadership for tech integration. We're really excited about that. 2 of our district coaches, Mrs. McCleary, Mr. Bailey, are leading that charge. They're meeting monthly with 1 teacher from every building. So again, it's a train-the-trainer model for our teachers to have a personal representative in the building to help with tech integration. Very, very pleased to have that. And then a second grant that our committee worked on and wrote, it's a digital learning grant. And one of the things we're learning as we navigate these waters is that, yes, the Department of Ed is requiring our students in K-6 to have 5 hours of instruction, and our students in grades 7 to 12 to have 6 hours of instruction. But it's more than just handing students a Chromebook and delivering the curriculum. We have to worry about that persistence piece with those students at home. How do we engage with them using the devices and the curriculum? And so this digital learning grant gives us more strategies in different ways that we can work with our students through groups and discussion boards and different ways that we can do reading and writing and engage our students. And so it's a learning curve to work on this digital learning, but we have teachers that are up for the challenge. And I guess in our little spot tonight, we just want to say thank you to those teachers that are working very, very hard to learn new strategies and help students in the very best ways that they can.
Thank you, Dr. Goller. Anything else for the good of the cause this evening? Our next board meeting will be September 28th, right here in the conference center. Thank you.